Welcome to Session 3 of 4-H Camp Counselor Training 2017, Positive Discipline and Risk Management. This is an online training module for counselors in the Calhoun, Jackson, and Liberty County Camp Cluster. This is a two-part training. We will first focus on positive discipline. As camp counselors, it is possible that you will at some point during camp activities encounter a youth who misbehaves. It is important to understand why and how to react yourself. While youth might misbehave for a variety of reasons, there are some common reasons that you should be aware of and consider in your dealings with youth at camp. First, youth who are bored are more likely to engage in inappropriate behavior in order to entertain themselves. We have worked hard to plan high energy and engaging activities at camp. If you see a youth who seems bored or who is not paying attention, help camp staff by redirecting their attention and helping them stay on task. Likewise, when we ask youth to do something that is too difficult for them, they may become frustrated and act out as well. If you see a camper having trouble with a task, gently offer to assist them. Youth may also misbehave when they are upset about something. The cause of their frustration may have occurred before or after they arrived at the activity. But by helping them to calm down, you may be able to sidestep negative behaviors. Finally, youth who do not get enough sleep, enough to eat, or enough positive attention from peers or adults may become irritable or seek attention. Make sure your campers are eating at meals, staying hydrated during breaks, and getting rest after lights out. And as always, look for ways to give them each positive attention during the day. The best way to avoid misbehavior is to be proactive. Someone who is proactive tries to avoid conflict before it happens. This can be done by setting rules and going over them before starting an activity. By clearly defining expected behaviors and outlining the consequences if someone misbehaves, youth are less likely to act out because they want to avoid the negative consequences. An example of this would be explaining to campers that they shouldn't be in the cabins alone. If you explain this on the first day of camp, campers are more likely to ask you or another counselor to return with them to the cabin if they forget something. Also, when possible, keep youth as involved in the camp activities as you can. When they're actively engaged, they are learning and making new friends and are less likely to be bored or lonely. So what exactly is unacceptable behavior? This depends largely on the age of the youth and the situation. What is okay for a 9-year-old may not be okay for a 15-year-old, and what is okay on a recreational outing may not be okay on an educational tour. However, you can be sure that the fine line between acceptable and unacceptable has been crossed when a child's behavior causes danger of physical or mental harm to himself or others, is disruptive to the activity of the group, or infringes on the rights of others. There are other clues you can use to help yourself detect unacceptable behavior. If you observe negative reactions from other youth, or if you as an adult are not comfortable with the behavior, you can be sure it is time to intervene. I know some of you are thinking, but I'm not an adult. And you're correct. But you're learning how to be. That's what being a teen is all about, right? Practicing for the responsibilities of adulthood. In this instance, I'll ask you to think like an adult. Maybe your mom. If your mom wouldn't be comfortable, you should probably say something. So think about it for a second. If your campers are telling ghost stories and your mom would be worried about the youngest camper in the cabin having nightmares, you may want to ask the campers to stop and try a different story. So if what's happening around you isn't something you want your parents to see or hear, it's a good idea to stop it. So how do we respond to unacceptable behavior? When you first suspect unacceptable behavior, you must determine the problem. This often happens instinctively and without us realizing it. But if you're unsure, you may actually have to think about this step. Once you've determined the problem, you should use the least obtrusive measure possible. In other words, don't cause a scene that creates more disruption. Also, consider laws and liability issues. Dealing with other people's children may be different than working with kids in your own family. Use methods that would be acceptable to most people. Use this as an opportunity to earn respect and credibility. It takes time to develop mutual trust. Your goal is not only to become a buddy to your campers during the week of camp, but also to be a role model who leads by example. And finally, be firm but fair. Being consistent in applying the rules lets the youth know that you mean what you say and that the rules should be taken seriously. We need to learn and practice some simple and respectful ways that we can use to intervene verbally or non-verbally when we see unacceptable behavior. Think of these strategies as tools. None of these tools works every single time, so the more tools you have at your fingertips, the more likely you'll be successful with youth. Responses at work are respectful and preserve youth's dignity and redirect their behavior. That's one reason to start with very simple and non-threatening tools first. These simple tools act as reminders for youth and allow them to monitor their own behavior. Youth do not always see the reason for certain rules, and because they frequently are living in the moment, young people may not anticipate unsafe or frightening consequences of their behavior. These are tools we can use to help ward off unacceptable behavior in the first place. First, praise the good. Catching them being good is a great way to reward and encourage positive behaviors. Second, set rules in advance. Don't assume that youth know what you expect. They may become accustomed to totally different rules and expectations at home or in school, so make sure that everyone is clear on the rules. Also, if you've planned activities that focus more on doing than watching and listening, you are less likely to have behavior problems. Kids want to try things themselves. Show them how and then let them do it. This is a learn by doing philosophy of 4-H. Finally, make learning fun. When activities are fun and interesting to the youth, they are more likely to be engaged and less inclined to misbehave. The first two tools you will use often. The last two you will find that camp staff and your 4-H agents have already done, but you can support them by making sure everyone is engaged and being successful. Let's shift our focus to risk management. Let me start by saying that the purpose of this training is not to scare you or intimidate you, but to make you more aware of your surroundings and of your responsibilities at camp, so that you can do the best possible job and help keep camp a safe and fun environment for everyone. As with everything we do in life, there is a certain amount of risk associated with camp. Our task as 4-H agents and counselors, because we're a team, you and I, is to manage that risk. To fully understand how to do that, we need to first understand what risk is. As this slide indicates, risk is a situation exposing a person, place, or thing to danger. Our concerns for risk go in precisely that order. The people at camp are our top priority, followed by the camp itself and then the things in it. While we do ask campers and counselors to help us take care of the camp facility and camp and personal belongings, and to be respectful of them, our top priority is the people at camp. Therefore, much of your job at camp is to help us ensure that everyone is happy and healthy. Risk management is protecting assets by minimizing the potential of negative outcomes. In our case, the asset we want most to protect is our campers and counselors. To manage risks, we have to know what they are. You will find that as a counselor, you are often observing what is happening around you and asking yourself what potential consequences may be. If you feel a situation is or could quickly become dangerous, it is your responsibility to help stop it if at all possible. Let's look at a simple example of how to handle risks. We know that falling and scraping your knee at risk is a risk at camp. The 4 ways to respond to risk are reducing, avoiding, transferring, and assuming that risk. To reduce the risk of falling and scraping your knee, we ask everyone to walk to and from activities. If you see a camper running, simply ask him or her to slow down. We also strive to maintain the grounds and keep high traffic areas clean and free of debris so that no one will trip and fall. If you see a tripping hazard, you'd want to report it to camp staff or remove it yourself if possible. To avoid the risk of falling and scraping your knee at camp, you would have to sit still or lie in bed all day, and that isn't what camp is all about, so we're going to have to do the next 2 steps instead. We, the adults, have transferred the financial responsibility for injuries at camp to an insurance company, which will handle major medical bills. That's a good example of how to transfer risk. But there are some times when you just have to assume the risk. Falling and scraping your knee is not such a terrible injury that we would shut down the camp to avoid it altogether. What are some risks that we do avoid at camp? If you've thought about it for a moment, you may have thought of things like not allowing youth to bring knives to camp. This prevents accidental injuries. Keeping prescriptions and other medications in the nurse's station prevents accidental ingestion by overdose by young campers. Not bringing money or electronics to camp prevents theft, loss, or damage. And not allowing phones at camp prevents inappropriate pictures from being taken against anyone's will and being posted to the internet before they can be recovered. Not being along with campers prevents you from being accused of doing something you didn't do. So as you can see, there are some risks that are worth avoiding. And we have policies and procedures in place to help you avoid those risks while at camp. Whenever we ask counselors what the risk at camp might be, these are the type of answers we typically get. As you can see, there is a variety of injuries that are of a physical nature, and then also the last two are more of an emotional nature and would cause emotional harm to our campers. We will address both in the remainder of this training. So what situations present risk? You can see a list here that we also have used our counselors to come up with. Things like horseplay, being left alone with youth, water activities, peeking into showers, inappropriate language or topic of conversation, leaving youth alone in cabins, people walking up on campus, inclement weather, fire, flood, natural disasters, theft, and of course accidental injuries that just tend to happen at camp sometimes. So how do we handle them? That's our job today, is to make sure that you understand how to handle these risks. Horseplay is particularly dangerous when it is in the cabins where no adult is present. You are responsible for your campers and what they do in the cabins. If you know that your campers are engaging in horseplay, even if you do not participate yourself, you will be held responsible. In extreme cases, this extends beyond just being in trouble with us, the agents, and can become a matter of legal review. Examples of horseplay include towel popping, wrestling, pouring water on each other, pinching, hitting, etc., putting things in socks and clubbing each other with them, dares, pulling back the shower curtain while others are bathing, etc. Do not allow horseplay. If it begins, quickly and calmly ask your campers to stop. You don't have to yell or scare them, just redirect them by saying, "Hey, that's not a real good idea, guys. We don't want anyone to get hurt on accident. Why don't you blank instead?" And you fill in the blank with an appropriate activity, such as play cards, get ready for bed, brush your teeth, sweep the porch so we can get ready for bed or leave for breakfast, whatever a good activity for them to be working on is. Another situation that presents opportunities for risk is being left alone with youth. Never be alone with a camper. When you are alone with the camper, no one else can vouch for what did or did not happen. It becomes a matter of he said, she said. People perceive things in different ways. I want you to consider this. Sometimes what people think they hear is not at all what we meant when we said it. Here's an example. If I tell you that your shirt looks good on you, and you go home and tell your parents, "Miss Cherry was checking me out," they could get very upset about that, and rightly so. That would not be appropriate. I simply thought your shirt was nice. Maybe it was my favorite color. But if we were alone when it happened, no one would be around to confirm the tone and intent were innocent when I said it. And what if I never said it at all? You just got mad because I made you help clean up chairs after training today, and you outright lied to your parents to get me in trouble. I know that seems silly, but young children don't always know appropriate ways to deal with anger or frustration. And just because you wouldn't do something doesn't mean that no one else would. So protect yourself and your campers by always having another counselor or a group of campers with you. We call that the rule of 3. Always have at least 3 people, including yourself, around. If you somehow find yourself alone with a camper, or if a camper asks to speak to you privately, immediately move into the view of others in the first case, and step away from the group but still be in plain sight for the latter. If they begin to tell you something sensitive or something that's making you uncomfortable, stop them and find an agent as soon as possible. This is one of the situations that actually presents the most risk at camp, but can so easily be avoided. Don't let this be your pitfall. Do not be left alone with youth while you're at camp. Water activities, of course, present hazards. However, if you make sure the lifeguard is on duty and that you're not at the waterfront at times when you should not be, then water activities should not be an issue for you. You are not the lifeguard. Just make sure that you're following the rules and your campers are as well, and that there is a lifeguard on duty when you're at the waterfront. One of the not so common things that we encounter at camp, and actually I don't know that I have ever encountered it, but we were trained to train you on this, is peeking into showers. Please do not allow this. Usually this is not done because someone really wants to see anyone else in the shower. They're typically teasing or just running by and pulling back the curtain. The person it happens to may think it's funny, but when they get home and innocently recount their camp adventures to mom and dad, their parents may be highly offended and file a complaint. So even if it seems like no one is upset, you need to try your best to keep things like this from happening. And let us know if it does. I do not want to be surprised when we get back from camp with a call from mad parents or, in a worst case scenario, DCF or a law enforcement officer. Another scenario is inappropriate language or a topic of conversation. Stop these as soon as possible. You know what is inappropriate. Foul language, picking on others, talking bad about people who aren't around, etc. There are also some topics which aren't necessarily bad, but which can be controversial and should be avoided. They are simply inappropriate for camp. At camp. Not necessarily inappropriate all the time, but they're not appropriate at camp. These things include politics, religion, sexual orientation, and yes, even college rivalries. It's not worth fighting over at camp. Let it go. If these things come up in conversation and become heated, especially, but if they come up at all before it gets heated, it's best to stop it as soon as possible by redirecting the conversation. You can say, hey guys, that's not the kind of stuff we talk about at camp. Let's change the topic. Youth should not be left alone in cabins. It's best if they are not allowed to be alone in the cabins. It's not safe for them because if they fall or pass out, we will not know it to be able to help them. But also, we don't know what they've touched or taken while they're in there. And we have found in the past that campers lose things if the cabin is allowed to be messy. So during the week, something goes missing, whether it's a pair of headphones or socks or a bathing suit, you name it, it's been lost at camp. But rather than assuming it's just been misplaced, there are many campers who will often accuse others of stealing. So if no camper has been left alone, there's no way they could steal without you knowing. If you see a stranger on campus, report it immediately to the nearest adult and take your campers with you. It's not very often that people walk up on campus, but this has been something that's happened in the past, never in a threatening way, I will say. Sometimes people just boat up on the waterfront or they pull into camp because they camped there 30 years ago when they were kids and they want to see it because they were in the area on vacation. And that's fine. Visitors are welcome at camp, but they have to check in at the office and they must be attended by the resident director. She does not allow people to just wander around camp aimlessly during 4-H weeks. That is not a good scenario. Inclement weather is not something that we can control. In the event of inclement weather, and we're talking about rain or high winds, follow directions from adults, especially if you are in the middle of an activity. Listen to the staff members who are present and follow their directions and help your campers follow those directions. The same thing with fire or flood or natural disasters. Use the training that you've received in your youth about stop, drop, and roll, or evacuate immediately, get under the smoke and crawl, all those things that you've been taught in the school by your local fire marshals and firemen. Follow those general guidelines as well. But if we're in a situation where we've had major something happen, follow the directions from the adults around you and make sure that your campers stay together and follow those directions as well. We talked a little bit about theft earlier. If something in your cabin goes missing, report it to your agent. She will help you recover the lost item if at all possible. Oftentimes things are just missing, and if we go in and help you guys clean, have your cabin members clean up then it will often turn up. If it doesn't, then we can say, hey guys, if you accidentally put this in the bag, in your bag, or it got mixed in with your stuff, if it will just reappear in the next 24 hours, we're not going to accuse anyone of stealing, and they will often return it if theft actually did happen. Please do not wait until the end of camp to see if it turns back up. Once bags are packed, it's often hard to get items back. So if something goes missing, don't just tell your campers that it's lost. If y'all search the cabin and can't find it, everyone's looking, come to us and help us. Let us help you find it. Then, of course, accidents happen. So if an accident happens at camp, report it to the nearest adult immediately. Camp staff and the nurse are trained to handle injuries of varying degrees. And then make sure that an agent knows. Even if it's just a bruise or someone fell and hit their head and you think they're okay, make sure that your 4-H agent knows what happened to that child, in case sometimes, you run into something or you fall and you don't have any bruises, and a couple of days later bruises show up. And the kid may not remember what happened. So when they get home, their parents want to know why they have bruises on themselves, and they can't answer because they really don't remember. So many things happened at camp and they were having a good time and they don't remember it. So make sure that we know what happened to the campers. So if their parents call us, we can often say, oh yes, their counselor let us know that they did slip and fall in the bathroom because they were not keeping the floor dry or whatnot. Don't be scared to help us, and let us help you. So put yourself to the test. In the following slides, there are scenarios which could potentially happen at camp. Work alone. In your instance, you will probably be working alone, or with a counselor group if you're training with a group of counselors, to come up with what you think is the best possible solution for each scenario. Let's look at scenario 1. Johnny is a very forgetful camper. Despite the fact that you reminded him 3 times this morning to remember to take his towel to the waterfront for kayaking, he somehow managed to forget it. What do you do when he tells you he forgot it? You can pause here if you'd like to take some time and think about it. Here's your answer. Make sure an agent or your group's staff member, if you're out in an activity group, there will be staff members there, knows that you're going back to the cabin. Take Johnny and another camper with you. You remember the rule of 3? Don't just take Johnny. You need 3 people to go back to the cabin with you. Scenario 2. While telling a story of a family vacation with her dad and stepmom, Jenny gets interrupted by a camper who tells her divorce is a sin and begins to outlay the consequences as she sees them. What do you do? The answer is interrupt the other camper and explain to them that it's okay to have their own views on divorce, but that everyone has different views and beliefs, and that at camp we don't discuss them because we don't want anyone's feelings to be hurt. You should probably also consider that Jenny's parents may not be divorced. Her mother may have passed away. So Jenny's stepmom may be a second marriage as a result of a death in the family, and that could be a very sensitive issue for Jenny. Sometimes young campers jump to conclusions, and these are real things. So think about this and try to be sensitive if something similar happens in your cabin. Scenario 3. It's your turn for shower, and the other counselor in your cabin is supposed to be watching the campers and making sure they finish cleaning up the cabin, hang up wet swimsuits, and get ready for bed. When you get out of the shower, you realize that the campers have turned their bunks into forts and are throwing shoes, sunscreen bottles, and other items at each other as if they were at war. Everyone is laughing, and even the other counselor is enjoying this game. What do you do? And I made this one into a bit of a multiple choice for you. Do you A, dodge the projectiles as you make your way back to the bunk because you're tired and just want to go to bed? B, pick a team and join in because it looks like fun and no one will ever know? C, start yelling and screaming to stop or else? Or D, say what the heck? Have you people lost your minds? You were supposed to be getting ready for bed, not reenacting the battle at the Alamo. Get this mess cleaned up and go to bed. It's almost lights out. Okay. So none of the above really are the answer, right? Do dodge the projectiles and do get them to stop, clean up, and go to bed before lights out if you can. But maybe we shouldn't ask them if they've lost their minds, even if we are smiling. I know it can be hard to intervene when the other counselor is encouraging the behavior, and hopefully you won't have that problem after today. Hopefully all of our counselors are going to be responsible. But if it does happen, do what you can to stop it. If you can't stop the behavior, seek help from an adult. And if you do get it stopped, let us know it happened anyway. That's not snitching. It's just good sense. You don't want the other kids to tell us later that you were playing too when we find out that it happened, because it will be more believable at that time if you hid it from us. We're more likely to believe that maybe you were engaged in some way. So the best thing to do is to just go ahead and let us know. Please do not yell and scream. Why is this risky behavior? I know that games like this are bonding opportunities, especially for boys. Girls do things like this as well. But I've noticed with boys that the horseplay is almost a bonding ritual for them. And these are the things that they enjoy, and they have fun doing it. But think about the stuff that they're throwing. If you got hit hard enough in the head or in the face with a sunscreen bottle, you may need stitches. It could, if they threw it really hard, break your nose, I guess. I don't really know. But I do know that bad things can happen. You can be bruised, you can be cut, you can be injured. And who knows what this is going to escalate to shortly. So definitely this is something that we would want to stop, even if it looks like fun. Scenario 4. You hear rumors that some of the female counselors are sneaking out to play pranks on the boys on the last night of camp. After all, they're senior counselors, so what can we do on the last night? Send them home or tell them they can't come back next year? As a senior counselor, this is their last year and it's the last night, so that may not seem like much of a threat to them. So what do? The answer is to tell the agents. We'll keep your tip anonymous and no one will know that it was you who told. And yes, we will send you home in the middle of the night. So there's my little smiley face again. I'm smiling. I love you. I don't want to do it. But if it's bad enough, we will call your parents and tell them to come on and get you. Seriously, though, think about this. Pranks may seem good-natured, but people could get hurt trying to cross the field in the dark. Campers in the cabins that you're pranking could wake up and get scared while you're setting up the prank, and they could get hurt trying to get out of bed and see what's going on. And besides, who's in the girls' cabins watching the kids while they're out pranking? We've not had pranking at camp before, so please don't let this be the year that it starts. Scenario 5. A camper confides in you that they have been abused at home. What do? Abuse is a very sensitive and private matter. It's very serious. Try to kindly stop them from telling you all the details. The best way to do this is to tell them that you're glad they trusted you enough to confide in you, but that you're not supposed to talk about things like that with them. Do not promise them anything. You cannot promise them that no one will ever hurt them again. You can't promise them that they won't be taken from their home or that they will be taken from their home. You don't know, and you cannot control that. Also, don't promise them that you won't tell, because Florida law requires it. Even if you don't believe it's true, or if you just don't know if it's true or not, we have to report it. Hopefully this will not happen, but if it does, come to us immediately. We will respect their privacy, and you should too. We won't tell it all over camp or share it at counselor meetings, I promise. But we do have to report it to the authorities and let them take it from there. Our final scenario is scenario 6. The kids in your cabin are a little rowdy. On day 3 of camp, they start to jump from bunk to bunk, chasing each other. One camper falls and cuts his leg on something in the pile of junk in the floor. You don't even know what it was, but he's bleeding pretty badly. What do? A, tell him to suck it up and be a man. B, you know you should have stopped them and you don't want to be in trouble, so you grab a sock and wrap it up. Then you find some Band-Aids your mom packed and bandage him up as best you can and tell him to wear jeans the rest of the day so the adults won't notice. C, you scream like a girl and faint at the sight of blood, leaving your campers in a panic. Or D, you scream like a girl and faint at the sight of blood, but your campers are so bad that they take this opportunity to draw on your face with a permanent marker. Okay, guys, laugh at that one. You know it's funny. But you have a cut camper, so let's get to the real issue at hand. Yes, the multiple choice answers were a little bit silly, but there are some things to think about here. You were too tired to make them stop jumping and thought maybe they'd get some energy out and sleep better that night. We know, we get it, but that is not okay. If you're having that kind of trouble with your campers, let us know and we'll have a cabin meeting with them and see if we can help. Sometimes we don't even need a cabin meeting. The agent of the camper can sometimes talk to them on the side, and they won't even realize that we've been told that something's going on. But we can help them realize that their behavior maybe is not appropriate, and to help them change that behavior and be an influence for good in your cabin. So how to treat the cut. Send the other counselor in your cabin to find the nearest adult, and then an agent if it wasn't one of us in the first place. Keep the other campers calm. Keep the hurt camper calm. And most of all, don't try to hide it, because you don't want to be in trouble. Accidents happen. We all make mistakes, and we all make poor choices sometimes. It's much better to get this out in the open right away and let us help you fix it as much as possible before things get out of control. This camper doesn't need an infection because he didn't get proper medical treatment. After all, you don't know what he fell on, because there's apparently your campers are not only rowdy but they're messy as well. And you wrapped it up in a sock. Was it a clean sock, a dirty sock? Do you know? Let's go ahead and get this guy some medical attention, so we won't have to worry about further medical treatment later. Now that we're all totally excited to go to camp, maybe? Seriously, I know this is not the fun part of camp. Preparing for and focusing on the bad things that could happen often makes me a little nervous to go myself. But that's not the point. We just want you to be prepared, and we know that can be nerve-wracking, but we want you to know what could happen. Not that all of this does happen. Some of these things have never happened while I've been at camp, and I've been camping for 10 years now. But I want you to know what could happen and how to handle it before it comes up, because that's half the battle. So remember that camp is fun. Camp is where the fun happens, and if we're having fun and keeping everyone engaged, then most of the bad things don't happen. Remember the rules. If you're being respectful, kind, safe, enthusiastic, energetic, you got everybody on time and prepared for their activities, then you are being a great leader and you are setting a great example for them. And if you do those things, then I can guarantee you we're going to have a great week at camp. Or at least I will, because I like it when everyone's safe and happy. So that is our main focus and our main goal at camp. This concludes Session 3 of Camp Counselor Training 2017, Positive Discipline and Risk Management. If you have any questions regarding the information covered in this training, please contact your local extension office. You are now ready to complete a brief training evaluation. Return to the training website and follow the evaluation link. The evaluation should take less than 10 minutes to complete. Thank you for your time and commitment to helping us make the best better at camp this summer.